Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction and review for The Fall of the House of Usher, Episode 5, The Telltale Heart. I think this is an episode a lot of us, at least all of us Poe fans, were really looking forward to.
Absolutely. This is my absolute favorite episode of the season, hands down. It's not even close. And that's saying a lot because this whole season has been straight fire. Tania Miller, like 10 out of 10. I had never, ever seen Tania in anything before this, and I'm a fan now for life. Her performance was just incredible, like incredible.
I I really love this episode too. I will say it's a little bit closer. Like this is my number one. I think the Prospero episode is my number two.
Mhm.
They're pretty close to each other, but I had really high hopes going into this because the Telltale Heart is my favorite thing that Poe ever wrote. It is so creepy, so intense, like so dramatic. I think this episode nailed the vibes of it. And with Poe,
Mhm.
it's all about the vibes. You just gotta freak us all out in one way or another. But beyond all of that, I think the most important thing within the context of the show is they're giving us a lot to think about when it comes to the end game, but also
Mhm.
kind of simultaneously going back in time and showing us more of, okay, this is exactly how we got here, and it's also why these characters cannot escape this fate, like no matter how hard they either try or do not try.
Absolutely. I mean, let's just put it out there. I've got a theory that all
Yeah.
about Madeline that we're going to be talking about. We've seen, Roderick talking to Augie this whole time where he's just been Madeline's downstairs. Oh, don't worry. That's
Yeah.
just Madeline. What do you guys think has happened to Madeline? Is she just downstairs or is something else going on? Everybody have your tinfoil hat
Yeah.
on because I've got some theories on what's actually going on here.
All right. And before we get into them, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of our coverage of this just like really awesome show that is. I think there's going to be so many people who love this that are talking all about it. So hit that subscribe button. By doing that, you help to support us so that we are able to continue to do these videos that we are just having a total blast doing with this show.
Yeah, it's so good. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Madeline.
Yeah.
So, we saw in this episode that Verna had a talk with Madeline back in the past. So, she was like, listen, I heard what your brother's resolution is. He wants to change the world. And what is yours, though? Because you just agreed with him. Like, is that also yours or is it something else? Hers is something else. She doesn't want men to have control over her, but more than anything, she wants to live forever. And that's sort of the big thing that we even saw with her in the present.
Yeah.
She's very obsessed with objects that are sort of, fountain of youth, they're living forever, you're never going to die sort of thing. And this is where we kind of start to get into this theory that I have. So, we saw at the beginning of this whole show with Augie sitting down with Roderick, where Augie was like, well, where's Madeline? Like,
Mhm.
she's very present in everything that's happening, every conversation that's happening. She is part of it. She is in control of a lot of it. Verna even called her a queen without a crown.
Yeah.
So, why is she not part of this conversation that's happening between these two men?
Yeah.
Here's the theory. I think that Madeline is in the basement. And I think that she's been either buried alive and she's under the floorboards or she's in the wall. And this is why. One, we know that Roderick and Madeline buried their mother on the same land and she was able to pull herself out of the dirt back alive enough to go down the street and kill her lover. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we also know that something happened on that New Year's Eve with Roderick and Madeline that has to do with Griswold. It has
Yeah.
to. I think that they walled him up at the bottom of Fortunato because we have seen Roderick talking to a wall at the basement of his company.
Yeah.
I think that Griswold is in there. So I think that that is something that the two of them did together in the past.
Mhm.
And now he's in this spot now where all of his children are dying. He's having these hallucinations, these visions of his, children dying. Is he actually behind it? Is Verna behind it? I think he's behind Madeline being in the basement. And I think that she's like walled up, still alive. And that's why all we hear is like banging and
Yeah.
clanging, but we don't hear her voice. She's not up there for that conversation. No way she's not up there for that conversation. She's unable to participate because she's in the wall. That's what I think.
Think it's a very interesting theory that makes sense with how dark this show really is. That I think Roderick in his current state, and I think that's the big sort of main
Mhm.
point here, is that in his current state, he's capable of really doing just about anything because either he's not going to remember that he did it or he's going to believe that, okay, whoever he's doing this to actually needs this to happen. I mean, if I'm going to have another just crazy theory here, like, who's to say that Dupont is actually real in that
Mhm.
moment? I'm not saying in the past that Dupont wasn't real. Like, I certainly think that he was, but there is a part of me that also thinks that is Roderick just sort of talking to a figment of his imagination so that he can sort of find a way to feel like he's gotten all of his thoughts out there, that he has cleansed his soul, that he is, actually said and explained everything he needs to do before he ends up dying. Because I think in one way or another, and this is not a big stretch, this is not based on anything Poe has said, but it's just like, I think Roderick's gonna die at the end of this. I mean, every other person in his family has, so it might as well also be him.
No, I mean, that's a really good theory. I mean, especially with how important Augie has been to him this whole time. I mean, we even saw in the past that conversation that Madeline had with Griswold, who's just not taking her seriously, who's basically like, let's go to bed or you can get out, sort of thing. And when they're all back at home talking, where,
Yeah.
Roderick's there, his wife's there, Madeline's there, so is Augie, and they have called him in. And it seems like the four of them are kind of trying to like, hatch some kind of a plan of like what they're going to do to kind of take him down. But like, I don't think Augie in any way knows that this might end up being where Roderick and Madeline end up, which is where I think they kill him and put him in the basement of Fortunato and they wall him up.
I mean, it is so unbelievably dark, but it also, one of the things that I think thematically happens a lot in Poe and some of his works, including The Telltale Heart, which is this idea of guilt follows you. And we talk about this in The Black Cat in a lot of ways, where, Leo is haunted by what he actually did to the real Pluto, and now he's sort of being haunted by new Pluto, if you will. In this episode, the heart is still beating, the artificial heart is still going. You can't escape what you have
Yeah.
done. And if your theory about Madeline turns out to be true, it's like Roderick can't escape whatever he may have done to her. It's all still there. If you do something bad within this world morally, it comes back to hit you and it never really goes away.
Seeing that picture from Leo's phone of Verna holding a rat and not a cat was like, took my breath away. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That was so crazy because obviously she's a cat, but I was just like, that he didn't obviously see what he was supposed to see in that. But seeing Madeline be like, we know this woman, we have seen this
Yeah.
woman. I mean, Madeline has, I think, made some sort of a deal with this woman when Verna was like, oh, what is it you want? Oh, this is what I want. I want to live forever. And it was a deal sealed with a kiss. That her theory is like, oh, this is another one of your kids. It's not Verna because she, not look like this. But this has got to be another one of your kids. It's popping up. That's like killing off all your other kids to be the only heir.
I really, really hope that this is where they're going with this, that Madeline is the person who makes more of the deal with Verna for the reasons you've explained. And I just think a big part of it is, no, I'm not even just talking about Poe, but like pretty much any form of writer in the 20th century or before. I mean, let's all be real for a moment here. There's unfortunately a lot of, white men dominating this field for many, many centuries. And it's often in these stories, the male character who is like, I want power. I want to create the monster. I want to do this, that, or the other thing. It would just be a nice spin on it if it is really Madeline who is the person who is seeking the immortality, the power. Roderick is hardly innocent in anything. Like, I think we can very much say that, but having
Yeah.
her have her own autonomy and her own sort of desires and her own willingness to take big risks, like, that's exciting. It's invigorating for the story that we're being told.
If there was a transfer of power there with that kiss
Yeah.
and Madeline lives forever and she's walled up in that house forever, I mean, what a sad end to that character. And I'm not saying she doesn't necessarily deserve it because she's done some pretty bad things. I mean, even when she's like, "Oh, this could be another heir to the fortune." I want a receipt that this has been dealt with and I want her eyes. She's clearly not a great person. So,
No.
I mean, like, but does she deserve this to live forever walled up? I don't know.
This whole show is sad, and it really does, like, beg the question of, is anyone gonna get a happy ending at the end of all of this? Like, I've tried to think a little bit about it. I mean, is maybe Lenore get some sort of happiness once all this is over? Maybe. Nobody, I certainly don't think anybody else is. I mean, we don't know still what happened to Annabelle Lee, but there's that question that was brought up in that flashback. Where's your wife, Roderick? He's hanging on to other women. She's not around.
Mhm.
He claims that he's gonna say it. He's gonna explain it to Augie. It's just like, when are we gonna get that? It's not. I think we're gonna find out before the finale. That's actually the thing I'm the most terrified about, because Annabelle actually seems like a pretty good person.
It's interesting too that they did bring up in this episode that he never married again until he met Juno. Juno's the person, his only other wife
Yeah.
that he's had, that he had, a string of people, but he never actually married any of them. Okay, let's talk about
Yeah.
Vic.
Oh no. Oh
Oh
no.
my
Okay.
goodness.
All right.
She's the character that I always felt. And I mean, they kind of talked about this a little bit in Camille's episode where, Verna was like, "Oh, you have dirty hands, both of you, but people see you for what you are." And
Yeah.
Vic is better at hiding it. But in this episode, it kind of felt a little more like there's two sides of Vic that are really like pulling at each other. There is somebody, she's the most like Roderick. I'm just going to say that
Hmm.
right there. I think she really did want to change the world. Just like Roderick when he was asked,
Yeah.
what's your resolution?" "Oh, I want to change the world." I think he believed that at that time as well. And I think Vic felt that at the beginning of all this too. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to
Yeah.
make a difference. Then all that Fortunato money came in. And then it was like, okay, well, now there's pressure to
Yeah.
make money, $200 million. I got to make that back. I got to make this worthwhile. Success. That the I want to change the world starts to move away into, I need to please my dad. I got to get together, this whole thing for my dad. I got to get this money back for my dad.
Mhm.
Change the world is now second. Like, it was just a lot of push and pull. Even that fight she had with Al, you could see it in
Mhm.
her, where it was like half of it was like a fight about the money, but a half of it was a fight about love and making a difference and really believing in this. It was, oh my God, so good.
Okay, this is gonna sound really hokey, but it's in part because of the song choice. This is a total eclipse of the heart for Vic in this episode. It is because her desire, both in terms of the heart, the emotion that she has for her father, but also the desire she has to get this heart project off the ground, the ambition she has. Like, she does believe that this is going to work to the point that it does sort of eclipse whatever sort of rational thought is in her head of, okay, I need to have more time to make this happen. I need to have more tests. But I think, yeah, her father is the thing that really pushes her to get this thing off the ground immediately. And she loses in the process of this all rationality, like all logical thought. And madness is a big part of this show. And
Mhm.
it's taking a lot of
Yep.
different forms. And Vic's madness kind of comes in from this idea that she has to get this done no matter what, no matter how long it takes, and how hard she pushes, whether there's a disaster along the way. And it goes from 0 to 60 really quick with Vic in this episode. But at the same time, because we didn't get this story right away, they kind of laid the groundwork over the past
Mhm.
few episodes. it really felt believable when she does make that turn where she is, I have to get this done no matter what. Al, how dare you? You know how much I put into this. I put my entire heart into this. We need to make this work. And by you being like, I don't want to do this anymore, that is a complete betrayal of me. I no longer see things clearly.
Yeah, and I mean, Vic did call out to be like, "Oh, you were fine to do this when, your bank account was filling up and all
Yeah,
this money was coming in." That's like, "Oh, now you have a change of heart." And I think she sees a little bit of like, jealousy in that where it's like, "Oh, she can have a change of heart that even though she felt, okay, maybe we're making a difference, the money's coming in, she can actually
yeah.
get out of this. Me as Vic, I can't get out of this because I'm a kid of Roderick Usher. There is no out for me. Like, and this was my sort of one space outside of everything, my love, my
Yeah.
partnership, somebody who understands me. I understand them, that we do want to do good. We think we can do good, but that, all this pressure is really more on Vic than it is on Al."
This how this story ends. It's really terrifying. It's also really really well done and very like the Telltale Heart as a story is not it's not like super in depth. Like they're adding a lot to it for this episode, but the real defining memory of the Telltale Heart is that heart beating, and they've sort of adjusted it and made it into this artificial heart in this episode. But just hearing it, the sound mix of it, the way that they sort of play it all out, there's a certain point in the episode where I think, regardless of if you know the story or not, you probably think, oh no, this is where we're going. This is probably what's happened. And it doesn't prepare you still for when you actually see it. And when we get to that scene with Roderick and Vic and Al, and she's got the artificial heart in her, it is so disturbing. Like, so well done, though.
Yeah, that was like the scene that for Tania Miller, I was just like, so incredible and so powerful with so many emotions in it of like having approval from her dad in a
Yeah,
way because she was like she kept hearing the clicking of the heart and the
yeah.
beating of the heart, and she's like, "Aunt Madeline, do you hear this? Like it's everywhere, Verna, do you hear this? Nobody's hearing it." She's calling Al. I think like the show got me at a moment near the end when Roderick came over because I was like, when she first threw that book
Yeah.
end at her, I was like, "Oh, she must have hit her," because they cut it out, right? Like, so I was like, "Oh, okay, she must have hit her. Like, she's got to be dead." But then she's calling her. I'm like, maybe she doesn't know that she's dead. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then she keeps hearing this clicking and clicking over and over again. No one else can hear it. But the minute that Roger came over and he's like, "Can you turn down that music? Like, I'm trying to have a really important
Yeah.
conversation with you. I'm really trying to apologize to you because your work is really important and kind of what's going on." And she turns down the music and she's like, "Yeah, I've got this music up because, do you hear that?" And Roderick's like, "Yeah, I do hear that." I was like, "Oh, okay. Maybe some of this isn't all in her head," and it's not. But like I at that point I was like, "Okay, now I'm really confused on what's going on." Because if Roderick hears it, do they have a shared hallucination? Or are they both hearing it? And they are both hearing it. So when it sort of came together, that was the moment that I was like, "Oh, I'm getting confused now. Maybe Al actually is still alive." So when the reveal all came at that moment, I was like, "Beautiful. This is done so well."
And it is curious that Roderick hears it. And I think it might be a shared hallucination. It might also just be in that moment. Okay, you know what? I harboring so much of my own guilt in a way, and that is sort of the biological connection that the two of us have, and so that I can be there for you, but I cannot be there with you.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because we had this scene with Roderick where he was thinking of just ending everything because
Yeah,
he's kind of like, if I end everything, all the rest of my kids will be fine. That's what he thinks.
yeah,
But that may or may not be the case unless, he did say to Augie at the beginning, "I'm responsible for all of my kids' deaths." Now,
yeah.
I don't know if it's just a guilt that he feels or like he literally is doing this to his kids in some sort of way. that by the time he gets to that room and he sees what's happened to Al with the heart, and he sees what's happening to his daughter, that her mind is broken now, that she looks at him at one point, feels like she's speaking from Verna, basically being like, you should have just done it. If you had done it, I would have been okay. Everyone else would have been okay, but you didn't. So now we need another heart, where she takes the knife, she plunges it, and then it switches where all of a sudden she's not in that mode anymore. And she's back to just thinking clearly, where she just cries out, "Daddy," and oh,
Uh,
my own heart. It was so painful.
yeah, this entire episode, it's just all cylinders. We're fully all in on all these characters now. I think that makes it so much more effective. Now, the other big question I'm sort of having coming out of all this is, we still have a couple of kids here to lose, right? Now, I don't know what they're going to do with Tammy. I'm just going to say that right now. Like, her story is still a mystery to me. I do have a Frederick tinfoil hat theory that I'm going to put on right now.
Okay, all right. What's happening to him? Because him bringing Maury home, I was just like, are you going to kill her? Because, like, why would you still have her alive after what she did? I'm telling you right now,
Yeah.
if my partner, this happened to them at that type of party, I'm not standing by you anymore. There is no way you can explain your way out of why you were at a party like that. We're done.
This is all about choices, right? So
Yes.
this is the choice. Frederick deciding, I'm going to go against these doctors' advice. I'm going to bring Maury home. Now, Maury is the one who actively made the decision to go to that party.
She did.
I just have this very dark image in my head that we're going to see her go back. Eventually, all those bandages are going to come off. She's going to transform into something else entirely, and that this is going to be the end of the Frederick story, where I think he is going to become so, like, just obsessed with this idea of, I got to make things as they once were, even though Maury was not happy as they once were, to the point where she was willing to go to this crazy Prospero party. They have really set things up here where there's going to be a dark twist between the two of them. Like, they kept Maury alive for a reason, and it's not just so that she can be all bandaged up and Lenore can go and visit her.
Okay, let's talk about Tammy.
All right.
Because, I mean, that fight that she had with Bill, listen, where she was basically like, I chose you to be my husband. I chose you to be the face of Build and, Goldbug and everything that's going to be going on. I control everything that has to do with you. I can easily replace you. To which I have to be like, no, you can't, Tammy. Because we've seen this in the news. If you follow any sort of like YouTubers or anything like that, once you've amassed your audience, that audience is yours. And we're going to talk quickly about the all gas, no brakes guy. Because if you ever watched that channel, we, for a long time, didn't realize that there was a company behind that channel. We all thought that it was Andrew, and he was the face, and he was the guy, and he had amassed millions of people following him. And then it all came out that it was part of a contract and somebody else owned that channel, and he went on his own. And guess what happened to that channel without him? It's over. It died. He went on to make his own channel and bring all of his people with him.
Yeah.
That's what influence does. You can't take that away once you've took the genie out of the bottle. You're wrong, Tammy. Like, yes, you can build another influencer and that's fine, but you can't take away what Bill has. It's there.
You can't connect with a company. You connect with a person, and
Right.
it gets all the way back to hearts again. You connect with people who have a heart, and corporations don't even have a mechanical beating heart. They have nothing. You can't build that attachment to them. And one way or another, all this is going to get roped into how Tammy's story ends. I just have so much curiosity about that, because there's a few different directions I could see it going.
Yeah, especially when she's like, I'm behind the camera, you're in front of the camera. It feels like, I mean, it could be something that's really public that happens to her, because she is extremely private. She's one of the kids that we know the least about. She can't have any sort of intimacy. She seems to, she's got women coming over to be with her husband because she can't have intimacy with him or anybody. And, It really does feel that way, and I think that there is gonna be some sort of a madness that's coming in for her as well. She's not sleeping, she's like he's even like, "Did you just fall asleep mid-sentence? Like, you're not
Yeah.
you're not sleeping anymore, you're not healthy anymore." I wonder if that's gonna come in for her as well. We saw it with Leo, we saw
Yeah.
it with Vic, it's happening with Roderick, and I know it's all different things, but that is definitely a theme of what's happening with a lot of the kids.
Why are there only 3 episodes? I'm so sad that we're
I
already this close to the end
know.
because this show has done such an incredible job. But hey, sometimes a short journey is the best journey. And like, if this show went on for years, maybe it wouldn't be as effective.
No, it
Yeah.
absolutely wouldn't.
Well, we have a few more episodes to get into. So hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any of them. And thank you so much to our patrons as well
Thank
for your
you.
support. We will see you here next time.